Tonight's event will feature a conversation on stage between Dr. Patrick Mason and our featured guest, Brian Kershisnik. They'll speak together for about 45 minutes. Then we'll open it up to Q&A with the audience. Let me introduce our speakers. Dr. Patrick Mason is a professor of religious studies and history here at USU, where he holds the Leonard J. Arrington Chair, Mormon History and Culture. He's the author of several books for academic and Latter-day Saint audiences. He teaches courses on subjects including Latter-day Saint history, the history of Christianity, and religion and peace building. In conversation with Dr. Mason tonight is our featured guest, Brian Kershisnik. Kershisnik is one of the best known and most successful Utah-based artists working today. Primarily a painter, his work has been displayed and held in collections around the state and the country. Perhaps nowhere more prestigiously than here in Logan, where one of his paintings hangs in our university president's home. Kershisnik literally grew up as a citizen of the world, living with his family in places such as Angola, Thailand, and Pakistan. He graduated high school from the International School in Islamabad, a distinction very few of our speakers here at USU can claim. He went on to earn his undergraduate degree from Brigham Young University and an MFA at the University of Texas, Austin. Kershisnik's work has been described as emotional self-portrait, mythological autobiography, or, in the words of USU art faculty member Noel Carmack, primitive realism. As you'll see, much of his work has religious themes and is often humorous and whimsical, such as Jesus and the Angry Babies. Always, he is reflecting on what it means to be and to become human. In an age of memes and deep fakes, I can think of no project more urgent than becoming more human. Just before we welcome Patrick and Brian to the stage, I'm going to show a brief video.
In my experience, work emerges from working. And so when I haven't been working, then I'm kind of outside of it, and I bounce around on the periphery for a while before I'm actually before I'm actually engaged in the work. And that process, sometimes it's just the artificial, I want to work again. I don't know what to do. I'm kind of scared of it. I'm scared of myself. So what I tell myself is just hurry up and do 5 bad paintings. Just to get into the middle of something.
Just start.
Yeah, just start. Sometimes when you just start, you realize, no, it's not time. But usually you have to overcome some resistance before you're feeling it again. And usually you're feeling it for a while before you realize, oh, okay, I'm starting to find it. Find the flow of it, whatever it is. But it's, sitting and waiting for brilliance to assert itself before you start that's just a recipe for nothing. Chaos, in the way we talk about it mostly now, is like this bad thing that we're trying to get rid of, or we're trying to organize out of, or it was terrible. It was chaos. We say chaos is kind of a negative word, but and I get that. But in all of, not only in my theology, but in virtually every mythology of creation. Creation comes from chaos, Everything comes from chaos. And so it feels to me like to engage with creativity is to dance with chaos. Chaos that doesn't like you, doesn't dislike you, doesn't care about you, will just as soon kill you as save you. Chaos is like the ocean. It'll feed you or drown you, and not notice either one, But so it's not like it's not a dangerous thing, and I understand it, that there's a reasonable case for having some fear or some avoidance, but it's where everything comes from. It's where God gets all of his stuff. And so you have to also be open to the participation of chaos in your work.
All right, please join me in welcoming Dr. Patrick Mason and our special guest, Brian Kershisnik.
All right, we'll turn these on and see if they're working. Yeah, yeah, I think so. If you can find it. Can you hear me? Are the mics working? Okay.
There we go. Right. Okay.
Look for the light.
That's right.
look for the light. Okay, Brian. So thanks for being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
It's fantastic. So I want to pick up on one of the points that you talked about in that short film, which I think is really beautiful. I think for a lot of writers like myself, the blank screen can be an intimidating, even terrifying prospect. I imagine for a lot of painters, the blank canvas evokes much of the same emotion.
Yep.
Is that true for you? How do you approach a blank canvas?
By messing it up.
Okay.
And it's almost that simple. A lot of my images I just have to find with a brush. I mean, I often have some notion or a hint of a notion beginning of some concept that I want to explore. But I certainly have the experience of sitting there with my, chin in my hands, looking at a white canvas, wondering what to work on. But that's not how work happens.
Yeah.
So I just have to dive in. And actually this year have spent just the whole first quarter of the year just starting paintings. I usually am starting and finishing all at the same time, but I have two studios, the one in Kanosh that was in the video, and then one in Provo. And usually I'm finishing paintings in Provo and starting them in Kanosh. But for the last few months, it's been all starting. And largely it's just to have something to react to. I like to be surprised by my work. And so I can't, excuse me, I actually avoid, I don't avoid it. I don't want the concept to be fully fledged before I start it, because it's hard for me to stay engaged with it long enough to finish the painting. It happens sometimes that an idea comes fairly fully fledged, and I find that it's hard to remain interested in the painting because it's already been worked out.
Interesting.
The metaphor is already clear, and yes, it's a good idea, but I kind of like to find it in the process.
And so as you said there, I mean, it's needing to do the work, to dive. There's not a muse that you're waiting for, or.
Well, this quote is attributed to Whistler, although I've never been able to find it, so even with the internet. So it probably isn't Whistler. But anyway, the quote is, when asked, how do you find your muse? His answer was, when the muse finds me, she always finds me working. And that's what I have found. Well, first of all, I love to paint. I love the stuff. I love the mess of it. I love the accidents. It's just a physically delightful experience for me, and so. Yeah, with a painting, it's not like writing a whole book. I mean, you don't have to hold a narrative for that long,
Right.
And so I think the process maybe lends itself a little more to this kind of approach. But
For you, and we'll be talking about faith and spirituality throughout, is painting at all a mystical experience, or is it deeper engagement with presence rather than escape and transcendence? Is there too much romance of a non-artist to even ask the question? Is it a mystical experience? Are you doing a job?
Well, I don't want to answer that question because I think it helps galleries sell paintings if they maintain the mythology that I sit in the studio and wait for a conduit to the heavens to open up.
And that you're a special kind of human.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
yeah.
yes. It's actually, it is mystical, but my sense of the mystical has become a lot more quotidian as I get older. I don't think it's as unusual. Maybe we have to get better at noticing it, but I think it's. I think divinity is work. I think my sense of angels involves a lot of work. And work involves getting some things right and some things wrong and fixing them. You know. And so a day in the studio. Is that my feedback? Is this too close? It is. Must be mine. We'll see if that helps. And so it is. it is a mystical experience, but that probably describes about 30%, maybe 30% is a really great week.
Yeah.
A lot of it is making things work, finding how to resolve a composition. I'm not swallowed by the narrative or the metaphor. I'm often just trying to make the darn thing look better, and in the process think, oh my gosh, when I get rid of that, it works, then suddenly the message is much profounder or stronger or unexpected.
Yeah. So talk about, say more about what you mentioned at the end of the video, this sense of chaos and that in many, if not most, of the world's great religious traditions, there's a sense of creation being about bringing order to chaos.
Yeah.
Certainly that's true in Latter-day Saint theology, which actually quite explicitly rejects the notion of creation out of nothing or ex nihilo, and instead God is a great organizer of matter that's uncreated. How does that shape your notion of what creativity is?
Well, I agree with what you said, but even in the Latter-day Saint, and when I say mythology, I feel like myths are things that are truer than the accuracy of their details. We have stories, things that happen to us that become myths because they become kind of patterns. So when I talk about our mythology, I just mean that in our mythology of the cosmos, chaos intrudes on God all the time.
Right.
Rebellions, enemies.
Yeah.
That it's not like
Humans.
yeah. We're a mess.
Yeah.
A beautiful mess. My sense of the cosmos is that it is. I think I grew up with the idea that it was all very orderly, and certainly I believe in God as who likes order, but knows how to work with chaos and bring stuff out of it. And we are great agents of chaos in his experience, I would think. And this is.
So is creativity finding or this kind of balance between order and chaos?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I know people that are very creative, but they live only in chaos, and so there is no it's very hard for them to produce something to communicate. And there are people that are they're good at the other part, but not at kind of finding the surprising elements. I believe in a God for whom there is surprise. I think when I read the scriptures and about the creation, I read our scriptures and it talks about, that something was created and God said it's good. That's just this magnificently understated thing that God is saying, oh my gosh, have you seen the fjords? Check this out,
Right.
That it's like, yeah, he knows the elements, he knows how they work, but look what happened this time, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And plug for Norway. where
Yeah. Or a platypus. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. A good friend of mine has a drawing of a very strange beast, and the drawing is called Early in the Creation, and God is saying, this is not right. Yeah. But I believe that creativity, as I experience it, has a sense of play. It has a sense of surprise. In the way we talk about God, anyway, we talk about His disappointment. Disappointment is surprise. Delight is surprise. And so I think that I think He's surprised. I think I've surprised Him in positive and negative ways.
Yeah. And what's emerging on the canvas a, a painting that delights you or disappoints you is the surprise of what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I try to I have a relationship with the materials that I don't just make the material do what I want it to do. Oil paint, there are people who, different artists just approach that very differently. But I like to work in ways that that the paint kind of does. I'll apply it in certain ways. Sometimes lay a painting down and just pour a solvent on it, and I can't control what it does. And sometimes it ruins something wonderful, and sometimes it it makes something fantastic. In the little video, the Joe Adams is a guy who lives in Kanosh that I work with. I've been collaborating.
The other guy in the video.
Man with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've been collaborating with him for 30 years. And he is this magnificent agent of chaos. I mean, I kind of decide what are the tools that he uses that make the best marks, because he doesn't care. One picture is as good or as bad as another. He just likes the activity. He just likes putting it on. So he'll get paint. I'll give him a paint. And he'll just cover up a beautiful drawing, the whole thing, because he likes it. So I do things like mix paint with it is mostly Elmer's glue. So he covers it up and then it dries clear, And so I get to have the drawing and he gets to have the experience. But working with Joe is kind of an exercise in dancing with chaos. He's wonderful, beautiful, and funny. He did a piece one time, and I was asking him, what is it? And he said, maybe your wife, maybe God. He doesn't title them, he just describes them, but I just thought, oh, that is totally the title of this piece. Maybe your wife, maybe God,
Exactly.
And yeah, that's really I get titled. And he copies my work all the time too, so we go ahead and borrow from each other.
So
JoeandBrianArt.com as a plug.
Oh, really?
Workers for sale.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a person of faith. A lot of your paintings include Jesus, religious themes. Jesus themes. Sometimes explicitly, oftentimes with interactions between humans and what seem like supernatural beings. Right. I'm always one of the things I really like about your work is that there's a kind of collapse of distance between the human and the supernatural beings. That they look like they're all part of the same world. Oftentimes these supernatural beings or divine beings, they don't have a halo,
or the people have halos,
or the people. You reverse.
Or the dogs have halos.
Yeah, exactly.
Dogs are.
I know you think dogs are a higher order of creation.
Yeah.
So talk about this sort of collapse or inversion of the kind of ontological difference between the supernatural, the natural, the divine, the human. What's going on there?
I think part of it is kind of reaching for the holy in just very common experiences, which I think is healthy and I think is accurate. That my theology leads me to that whatever happens to me in my life, and I actually myself don't believe that everything that happens to me is sent to me by God. I think some of it is sent to me by knuckleheads. And I don't think God sent those knuckleheads. But my choice as a disciple is always to turn it to life or despair, in big or small tragedies, and I think that I mean to try to find the holy in common things, I think is just a way to not wait for massive miraculous experiences to kind of experience deity.
Yeah.
I think that
Do you experience anyone? Has anybody responded to your work that there's a kind of that kind of claim is threatening, that it lowers God a little too much or elevates humans a little too much? It's a common critique of Mormonism.
Yeah, and they don't talk to me.
Yeah.
You know, they,
Not even online? Not
No,
even-
no. I don't. If they do, I don't get it. But yeah, if people don't like my work, they don't talk to me. I wish they would. You know,
Yeah.
But mostly, I mean, it's very distorting that the only people who talk to me like what I do.
People like it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
with a check in hand.
yeah, well, and I don't have misgivings about that. I don't make significant mistakes and that my ignorance. Ignorance is a much huger reservoir for me to draw on than knowledge. I have a lot more ignorance than I have knowledge, and so I go there too.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work about about the difficulty of these two people who are right here interacting with each other, being able to understand each other, which I think is just a very I think we experience that. I mean, the people in our family, people that we're married to, that side by side we're experiencing something, and two very different things are happening, and we're 3 feet apart. I think that is, rather than a mystery to be solved, I just think that is kind of marvelous and fantastic and problematic and
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's interesting, fascinating,
Yeah.
diverting for me.
So some of your work has been purchased by religious institutions, especially the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Brigham Young University. You can buy some of your work in Deseret Book, a church-owned bookstore.
The church hasn't. Yeah, I guess they bought a few things.
Okay.
Mostly things have been donated.
Oh, donated. Okay,
yeah.
donated. All right.
They have stuff in their collection. But
Yeah. Talk about the relationship between art and institutions. Maybe this goes back to chaos and order, right? Institutions, especially some large institutions that may or may not be headquartered in Salt Lake City, are exceptionally good at order, right? And
too good at order.
yeah,
sometimes.
and artists, some artists might say that their job is to disrupt, to question, those kinds of things. How do you now? Not all of your art. You're not always painting for the church, but you're certainly within this context of and a community. You're personally a member of it. How do you think
I
about this
decided a long
relationship?
time ago that I never paint for the church.
Okay.
I'm pleased that my work is occasionally useful to them.
Yeah.
But frankly, they are a problematic patron.
Say more.
The expectations. It was once. Golly, yeah. Anyway, I'll go ahead and say it. It was described to me one time that like the church museum is a layer of volunteers overseen by a layer of very capable professionals who are overseen by a layer of volunteers. And so often, somebody who is not, somebody who's in a significant position to, on committees and, chairs of committees and such, they don't have what I'm doing is not particularly interesting to them, so they'll want me to change it. And anyway, I just kind of realized a long time ago, first of all, I don't do commissions virtually for anyone. I make paintings, and if you want it, you can buy it. There are a few exceptions to that. I could probably count them on my knees. Certainly one hand.
Okay.
But the church, when they are acquiring work for, there are all these other things that they feel like the piece needs to accomplish.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's just that I'm not the guy for that. There are plenty of people that are happy to do that, and that their genius is kind of stirred into being by that kind of a problem. But that's not where I find. That's not how I find the meaning in my work, and kind of. I mean, I like I say, I like to be surprised by my work, and the church, as a commissioner of work, does not want to be surprised.
Yeah. Either delighted or disappointed.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself from something you talked about earlier. We met privately with a group of students earlier, and you talked about this a little bit in terms of actually being a little bit wary of the impulse to paint a lot of explicitly religious art.
Well, I mean, the feeling that I've had for a long time is that people feel very strongly about Jesus. I do, I get it. And Jesus sells. And I don't want to use Jesus to get money, And so when I have an impulse to paint a painting that involves deity, my first impulse is to be suspicious of it and avoid it and think about it for quite a while before I do. I've done it, obviously,
Right.
and on a grand scale at times, but it is. I have to really feel invited to that piece and really feel like I'm needing to work something out. I mean, there was the painting of Jesus and the angry babies is kind of. I drew that picture initially to make Steve Vistanet laugh, because all the pictures of Jesus with the children, they're these well-behaved, cherubic, beautiful little children, and I was just thinking, do you have children? And so anyway, I initially
there was a reason his apostles were like, why do you want to hang out with them? They weren't well-behaved children. Yeah.
But I initially drew the first version of that, just almost like a cartoon. But the more I thought of it, I thought this is a much better metaphor for our relationship with Jesus and our not getting along and the difficulty of us than these magnificently, wonderfully well-behaved, adoring children, And I like it when that happens. I mean, I was playing and feel like I learned something important. And I feel like Jesus is perfectly capable of chuckling at that piece too.
Yeah. What
I hope he
You talk about art as a way to get closer to the true nature of things. What does that mean?
I think actually that was introduced to me as kind of a Confucian. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Confucian concept that the point is to try to get closer to the actual nature of things, and I think that that's not the domain of artists. I think that as humans, that's what we're trying to do, and my own feeling about creativity is that it's kind of wrong to assume that it's just the domain of so-called creatives. I think that to be a human is to have to figure stuff out and make sense of things and try to understand things and try to learn how to live with things that you don't and can't understand, and that's just describes a day in the studio. Mm-hmm. I suppose the difference is there are these artifacts of my process, these paintings. So tell me the question again.
Getting to the true nature of things.
So I mean, an example from painting is I had this painting I was working on that I think of as a religious. I feel like all of my paintings are religious because I'm religious, but they're not all paintings of Jesus, certainly. And but in this one painting, it was called Well, and it actually, initially, the concept was refusing to be healed. And in the original version of the painting, there was kind of a man reaching towards a woman who was leaning away, and I couldn't. It was a dumb painting. I couldn't get it to work until I just gashed his arm. I made a big gash in his arm, and suddenly it's confusing as to who needs healing, who is offering healing but actually needs the healing. You know, I didn't solve the painting by making it clearer. I solved the painting by making it more ambiguous, harder to figure out. And it felt truer that I've experienced myself offering solutions when I'm the one who is actually in a bigger mess than the person I'm trying to help. Or you know what I mean?
Yep.
That felt like that concept was felt to me closer to the true nature of things rather than this particular woman in this painting who was refusing to be healed. Mm-hmm. Like he had this thing to give her and she wouldn't take it, and which was kind of a silly concept. But when she was refusing him, but he was also obviously visibly and more obviously bleeding, that became truer.
Mm-hmm. Is art supposed to be beautiful?
Well, it depends on what you mean by beautiful. Yes, it's not. Doesn't it? Pretty is not. Pretty is a little facet of beauty.
So what is beauty?
Beauty. I believe that beauty is the sort of thing that brings us closer to again, to be repetitive, to the true nature of things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes beauty is extremely painful, and sometimes beauty is very, 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 very hard. Often, I mean, we use the word as something that just makes us comfortable.
Right.
And I think in that respect, that beauty, using beauty that way can be dangerous. Using art that way can be very dangerous. Because it pulls us away or distracts us or makes us think we've already arrived at something that we're not even close to. You know, I had the experience recently of reading Amy Jill Levine's book, Short Stories by Jesus. Big plug for this book. Write it down if you don't know it.
Tremendous scholar, Jewish scholar of early Christianity. Second Temple Judaism.
She's a Jewish scholar of
Testament.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And in this book she's going through the parables, most of which I thought I understood, heard them my whole life. And she essentially, the message of the book is, you Christians don't know what you're reading. And I just found that so liberating.
It turned out Jesus didn't go to Sunday school.
No,
right? I mean, he was
right.
operating in a different context.
Yeah, and anyway, it was a beautifully disruptive book. Mm-hmm. Realizing that there's something I don't understand now feels to me like, good. I'm uncovering something that I've been deceived about.
Yeah.
Or just wrong about, or not like anyone has tried to deceive me, but that book I felt like was an example of a certain kind of splendid discomfort of I really need to work harder.
Yeah.
And she kind of points out that if you read a parable of Jesus and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, you're probably not reading the parable of Jesus.
Right.
That a lot of what he was doing is saying, no, I'm taking the status quo and saying it's not that way.
Yeah.
And we've kind of scrubbed them up into nice little stories of how to be good, and they're often a lot more than that.
Yeah. My last question, then we'll open it up to the audience. So you mentioned reading this book. What's the relationship between reading and observation? I mean, the world that you're in. I know you're a big reader. You're also a musician. All these kinds of things.
It's all the same.
Is it
thing.
all the same?
Yeah. Yeah.
Different medium?
Yeah. It feels fairly seamless sometimes between. But it's trying to reach for the same.
And how important are the inputs, the books you're reading, the conversations you're having, one of the key, I think one of the things that makes great artists is they have a great eye, right? They observe things, they see things that I might ignore. So what's the relationship of input and output?
It's not necessarily very clean.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes years of processing before anything shows up in a picture that I read a long time ago. I love to go to the theater because of I love the marks of theater, like I love the marks of painting. And sometimes a play is important to me just because of how it feels or how it looks. Sometimes it's the words. I love poetry. I usually have a poem on my easel that gets all messy and covered up. And right now it's The Man Watching, Rilke, The Man Watching. You know, I mean, the last words of it are, "Victory does not tempt this man. This is how he grows, by being defeated decisively by ever greater beings." And I mean, that just, I don't even know exactly what it means, but I just feel like that's true, you know.
Yeah.
Or and the one that I just took off, they're on my easel for, you know, years sometimes, but the one that I took off that's all messy, I pinned it on the wall somewhere else, is Love Dogs, Rumi's Love Dogs. And it's a poem that taught me something that I feel like I knew, but it's that, well, it's a poem, so I can't tell you what it means, of course, but what I derive from it is that that the longing that we express to God for answers or understanding is the connection. That we kind of want that circle to close and to get an answer, and then we can write a story for the Liahona, you know, that it ties up in a nice bow. But in that poem, you know, the messenger talking to the man who's been praying is that, and it's called Love Dogs because he says, "Do you hear that dog whining for its master? That is the connection. That is the sacred cup." And when I realized that there are things that I long for, things that understandings I'm hungry for, and I was kind of waiting for them to get fixed, and I realized, no, I just need to include those in how I worship, that I don't know that they'll get resolved or that they have need answers. But I feel like in my relationship with God that sometimes the answer to the question I'm asking that I feel, I mean, doesn't talk to me so I hear him, but is that is a great question, and we'll work on you being the kind of being that can understand it. Thank you for asking, you know. Thank you for wanting to know. It's good for you, you know. I even have a sense with God that there are times I've gone to him and I'm angry, you know. And the feeling I have is that he says, yeah, you're angry, but I can handle it, and thank you for bringing that here. You know, too many people get angry and they go somewhere else. You know, bring it here. I can take it. And some of those experiences have been really beautiful, even though they were hard.
Yeah. I handled angry babies. I can handle your stuff, right?
That's right.
Good. Well, let's get questions from the audience. It's a little bit.
We
hard
can't
for us
see
to-
you, so
we
we
can't see
believe you
but
that you're
we'll
there.
try.
But yeah.
We've been asked to use the mic.
Okay. Excellent.
I will actually.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Joe will get his steps in. Any questions? And Joe, you can just pick them out as you see them.
Let's just start here.
Hi, my name is Sawyer.
Sawyer.
My question was about you had 3 words on your easel in this video, and I kind of,
Œuvre contre nature.
what does it mean?
Work as in like life work, or like a composer's oeuvre is all their work. So work against nature. It's a Jungian concept that it's your life's work against to kind of living kind of going upstream.
So follow up then. How do you
And I love it because they all end with re. Œuvre contre nature.
how do you use that, having that there? How does that like follow up into your process?
I was working on a drawing that I called that was the title,
Oh, okay.
and I thought, oh, they all have the same number of words, letters, and they all end with re. So there's a row of r's and a row of v's at the end, and just like the way it looked.
Sometimes it's not that deep.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
I think that's an interesting concept, that it's, there are times when you just have to go with what is, but there is a part of this life that is. When I was talking earlier about the decision between despair and life, sometimes sometimes your work has to be against what is the easiest way to go. The life will be pushing you towards despair, and you have to choose life instead. That's kind of an œuvre contre nature. That's how I read it. And I don't speak French, but I pretend sometimes. I have a painting called La Confession, which is a man saying, "Je ne parle pas français." So.
Hi, Brian. This is Michael over here.
Hi.
I've been looking at your work for well over 20 years now. I've always enjoyed it.
Me too.
I know. The question I have for you, one of the things that intrigues me most about looking at your work is looking at the layers of how this painting has evolved. And I love trying to dive in and see how the first sketch may be hinted at, but is completely different by the time you're at the end. The question is, at some point, you put the very last brushstroke on there. How do you know when that's the last brushstroke on that piece?
Yeah. I don't always get that right. I try to, I use some tricks. One of them is I'm working on 50 paintings at a time. And so when I try to not overwork a piece, and so if I have any doubt about whether or not I'm pushing it, then I put it aside and work on something else. And because it works out because I have 2 studios that I alternate in between. When I go back to a studio, I've been away from a piece for almost 2 weeks. And so I have like my sculpture facilitator, Victor, whose studio is right by mine. He is Mexican. The Mexican term, I can't remember what it is, but it means clean eyes. I look at it with clean eyes. And that helps me. Not being in a hurry helps me not overwork it, to stop before I've overworked it. So, that's kind of the big question, that no one really has the answer for, and some people are just really, really good at it, and some, there are artists that I think, 3/4 I loved this piece, and now I'm done with it, and I try to, working on so many paintings, I kind of try to work them until there is enough, and then stop. That's one reason that I don't work from life. In that, a guy argued with me. Working from life, for artists just means where you set up something and then you look at it and paint it. I don't do that. I draw, I remember, I imagine. And when I was making that case for a guy, I saying I don't paint from life, I paint from imagination. And he took issue. He said, no, your paintings are more from life than somebody who sets up a fake facade, you know. And because if somebody poses, they have to be still. But in life, we are almost never still, you know. And so it tends to make a certain static, have a static effect on the piece. And but deciding when something is done is that will just be a problem forever for me. Yeah. It's part of the poetry. It's part of the mystery. If you solve it, let me know.
Hello, I'm Jonathan.
Hey, Jonathan.
Do you ever struggle being an artist? Because sometimes I struggle.
Yeah. What I was trying to figure out how to say is, it's closer to say I always struggle being an artist. Often when, you know, I tell people I'm a painter, they say, "Oh, that must be so fun." You know? And I say, well, if I had to come up with 10 adjectives, I think fun would be on the list. I don't think it'd be in the top 5. You know, that there needs to be a critical mass of delight in the process to keep you engaged. But it is not fun half of the time. And becoming an artist is learning how not to stiff arm that reality, but to accommodate it. Figure out ways to make the parts where it's not fun propel you into the work too. You know, my wife sent me to a psychiatrist because she just said, you know, look, you really have ADHD, and I went and had a nice couple of sessions, and her conclusion was, yeah, you do, but you've learned how to make it work for you. You know, just kind of, I think that one aspect of being an artist is taking a certain neurodivergence and figuring out how to turn a liability into an asset, how to get that to propel you back into the work and into the part that you enjoy, you know. Yeah. But it's hard. It's not the easy route by any means.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Some in the room may remember Phil Donahue. Sorry. I'm going to come over. Keep those hands up.
We appreciate you doing this because we can't see. You're getting more exercise than we are.
Hi, Brian. I'm Melissa.
Melissa?
Melissa.
Okay.
She happens to be my wife.
Yeah,
Oh.
attached to that.
How long have you known?
I was thinking about your comments about chaos and order in the video and what you were saying, and it reminded me of a million years ago reading a critique of LDS LDS artists, Mormon adjacent artists, the works they produce. And the critique was talking about the tendency towards representation, bordering on illustration in some cases. It was very dismissive of it. But it had a really interesting point about knowability.
No ability?
No ability.
K-N-O-W.
Correct.
Ability.
Yeah, so which made me think of your comments on chaos and order. I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts about that. Like, would you agree with that? And what do you think that impulse is?
To understand your question, that help me understand the knowability part.
I was trying to look it up to remember, but what I remember is a sense of, if we're thinking about order, a sense of knowing, of certainty, of bringing organization to something,
right? Maybe
rather than abstraction or something that maybe is less.
Yeah, I mean, painting and sculpture, they are artifice. They are not real. The people that I paint are not real. Now, at the same time, I have this weird experience that there is a certain agency expressed by the people I'm painting. That there's sometimes I'm thinking, I want to paint somebody who's doing this, but no, they're going to do this. And so I feel like it is problematic. The way I describe it sometimes is I don't want to go to the canvas with a bunch of exclamation points. It is easier for me to be honest if I go with a lot of question marks. And I think that associating certainty with photographic accuracy, I think there is no relation. Anything that we do as an artist is a translation, and it will be literal to something. And I feel like literal to actual physical reality is not the most important accuracy to try to achieve. It is beguiling. It is, my grandma liked the ones that looked like photographs, and I'd fight with her about it. Bless her heart. I didn't always win those fights, but yeah, in Italy, why aren't the women's stomachs flatter? She would say. But anyway, I won that fight. But
Do you want the paintings to end up with question marks too? You go in with question marks.
I'm a Sunday school teacher too, and I feel great if I feel like we leave the lesson with people having more question marks than exclamation points. I feel like learning happens right there, not right here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that I feel like the people that have taught me the most have guided me into better questions. And so I feel like that painting is not to replace your experience. You know what I mean? I mean, a painting that illuminates something in the scriptures is not to replace your experience with those words. You know what I mean? I think it does better for you if it makes you think, what? I'm going to read those words. And even if you decide that artist got it wrong, that artist has actually helped you, because you have connected with something that's kind of closer to the source. But like, for example, I have a large painting. Some of you may know. It's called Nativity. Not the Nativity. I'm always correcting people. It's just Nativity. But it's, it's 19 feet long or something like that. It's very big. And, and people say, well, I don't think those clothes are authentic. And but I'm kind of trying to be emotionally accurate, not historically accurate. We don't, interestingly about Nativity, we have all kinds of notions of what the birth of Jesus looked like from creche scenes. The scriptures tell us almost nothing. The animals we added, the wooden manger or the wooden stable is a European fiction, it was likely in a cave. That the only thing that links the birth of Jesus to a stable is that he was laid in a manger. That's the only word I have found in the whole thing that says he was born anywhere near any animals at all, that he was laid in a manger. And mangers were usually made of stone then, so it's not like they would just haul one in to lay a baby in. It probably was out where the manger was. But all of it we've made up. We've fleshed out the story. And so I just try to go in at it with kind of try to be emotionally accurate, which is partially informed by my own experience, In my depiction of Nativity, there are midwives, We know nothing of that. But I know women. And I defy you to have a baby in somebody's garage and not be attended by women. I mean, when that thought occurred to me to put them there, I just thought, I know that that's right. And there's no evidence for it, you know. So I'm just,
And
there's,
you know that Joseph is off on the side, like not knowing what is going on.
oh yeah, yeah. There's a little autobiography there, but it's, anyway, I don't know if I've answered your question.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
It was a good question. I wish I'd given you a better answer.
Hi there. My name's Hannah. I'm actually studying art here at USU, and I love your work. It's really great.
I encourage that, Hannah.
My question, I guess I just kind of want you to expound on something you said earlier. You were talking about how it's okay for a concept not to be like fully fledged out before you start the work, because like then you lose interest while you're making it. And then, so taking that, and then also kind of what you were saying earlier about having ADHD and how you've learned to navigate that. I also have ADHD, so I'm learning to navigate like that and my art making and staying engaged with my work. And I always just kind of feel like I have to like have everything figured out before I get started. So I'm just kind of curious if you could expound on what you've learned in your art making and process and like what works for you.
I understand the idea of, I mean, I obviously can't solve it for you, Hannah, you know. I mean, we're all different. We just have to figure out how to make it work, I understand the impulse to want to have it all worked out in advance. I thought when I was your age that by the time I was my age, that's how it would be, that I would grow out of that. And that I would go into the studio and know what I was doing. And I found out, oh, that's never going to happen. That what I do and the metaphors that I find don't occur that way. And so, I mean, I think you should be open to the fact that maybe you don't have to work it out in advance. That is to me kind of a beguiling thought, but it never presented itself as a possibility in actual practice for me. I know there are artists who do that. And they are more able to listen to books on tape while they paint because they figured it out, and then they consume libraries while they paint. And I can't, I mean, I miss chapters if I try to listen to a book on it because it's happening right now, you know. I listen to music fairly loud, and I put the same, this is, the CDs are these things about this big. Anyway, I put 5 in the CD changer, and usually realize the music has stopped, and I hadn't heard any of it, you know, just because, and so music is more convenient way for me to kind of close down the world into this one place. Some fairly loud music, but and the only thing I can suggest you is just experiment, just try. What I did when I decided, I think I want to be a painter, I didn't have any painting classes that semester, and I just said, I'm going to do 100 paintings this year, and if I don't know what to paint, I'm going to paint. And so I didn't get to 100 that year, but I did a lot of paintings and started to see what it is that I do. You know what I mean? Rather than deciding what I do and doing that, I just realized, okay, I am fascinated by this kind of composition, and I like to join shapes with this kind of edge. And you know what I mean? I mean, those are not particularly interesting things to talk about. People want to talk about what the painting is about, but yeah, just give it a shot. Just say, go do 20 paintings, and you start them with no idea. Just to see what happens. Many of them will be bad, Hannah. That's okay. That's good. You'll learn from bad paintings. I think we learn more from our mistakes than we do from things we get right. I mean, I have the sensation still when I'll do a painting that I think, golly, I really like this. How did that happen? You know? And then the next time I go to a canvas, I'm kind of intimidated. I can't make that happen again. And I just have to say, shut up, paint, find it with the brush. Anyway, I don't know if I answered that satisfactorily, Hannah, but.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
It's not I would say it's a dumb way to make a living.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
seen as much so far.
Yeah, that's not the reason to go into it.
Yeah.
There are other reasons to go into it, and it sometimes it works out too for livelihood. But it's kind of the obligation to earn your living with your wit is problematic.
As Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, I want to remind everyone that we have many courses to help students learn how to make a living. So,
Okay, good. Take them.
but keep painting as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take 2 more questions, and then
I have 2 questions. So I hope I don't steal both of them. My name is Deidre, and my first question is, how much did your early life inform, especially your use of color, maybe, being throughout the world? And then second, that a lot of your paintings feature women and children, and what draws you to that?
I don't know the first one. Yes, I mean, I think so. I think it can't help but be influenced. I don't attach a meaning or experience to a color decision, but I think that it's all kind of in there and comes out. I am a father, and know many mothers. I have a mother too, and it is women and children. It's a fascinating thing to me that I don't fathom. You know what I mean? I mean, even being this close to someone who is, to my wife, and the connection between a child and her. I mean, I was a very involved father. I have a painting called Little Father, and it's this woman nursing a baby, and there's a little man on the chair, standing on the arm of the chair with his hand on her shoulder. There's kind of there's an amazingly unfathomable connection that I just would wonder at all. There's a theory, apparently in many languages, the word for mother it has M's in it, most world languages. And in many languages, a baby's word for father is d, because apparently infants, when they are needing comfort, make the and when they're excited, go da 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 da. And it was usually dad throwing them around, I guess. and then when dad would hurt them, they'd run to But I've done a lot of paintings of sisters. I grew up with no sisters, and I'm fascinated by sisters. I've married my ex-wife and my current wife have lots of sisters, and it's an amazing and strange and wonderful foreign thing. And so anyway, it's an example of me painting what I don't know, but I'm fascinated by, rather than painting something I understand well. Was that both questions, or do we
we'll take one last one.
Yeah, I was looking at your painting, the harrowing of hell, and that's something that I think is totally fascinating as a sort of concept and from scripture. And I don't know, I was really taken by the painting. I'd like to hear a little bit about it. What you see is going on in that painting.
Well, harrowing of hell. Short description. If you haven't seen it, it's a subject from art history of Christ releasing the occupants of hell, and the device that I used, borrowed from art history, was a kind of a monster's mouth, a hell mouth. Bosch, I think, many artists have used the kind of a hell mouth. In my sketchbook one time, I had a little signpost that I drew, and it had arrows on it, and it said the jaws of hell, the thigh of hell, the knee of hell, in different directions. But in this painting, there's this big tooth monster. All the people emerging and helping each other out of its mouth are all kind of. They all look kind of the same. That hell kind of stripped them of their individuality, but they're being liberated from this. The thing that I have not seen in those depictions of the release from hell is Christ is using his cross to wedge the monster's mouth open, breaking his teeth, and he's got blood on him too. And his sleeves are rolled up. He's working to try to get these people out. The idea to do a harrowing of hell was from a dear friend who every Easter posts just pictures from art history, and she had a series of harrowing of hell, and anyway, I just thought it fascinating and beguiling, and I get to paint a big monster, I feel like in my theology, the way we talk about things like this is often kind of gets scrubbed into kind of a neat, a neat thing, as if what Jesus did was not unbearable work, and frightening, And that painting was in the show at my retrospective at BYU, and I like it that the kids really love that painting. Probably because it has a monster in it, but it's. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's. I wanted to spend some time thinking about that, and so one way to stay engaged with that idea is. I like that as I was painting it, people are kind of spilling out over these teeth, to get out of the jaws, but other people are kind of helping them over the teeth, other of the occupants of hell, and anyway, that seemed like a beautiful thing to me.
Well, great. Well, this evening has been anything but hell, anything but harrowing. Join me in thanking Brian Kershisnik for a terrific conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, we've got it right there.
Yeah, there. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. Have a great evening.
It's cropped a little bit, but he's
let me
this
see.
guy's helping that one out. Yeah. There you go. Come on. Give me a hand.
If anybody wants to see that piece, I just saw it 2 days ago at the David Erickson Gallery
Yeah.
in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
Yeah. It's 7 by 8 feet. Yes, Dave Erickson on 3rd Avenue and E Street.
Excellent. Again, thank you all for coming. Have a great evening. Travel home safely.